Joining us right now to talk about the economy and inflationary pressures, Jared Bernstein, chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Jared, good morning to you.
Great to be with you.
I want to start this conversation by talking about the price of gasoline and what's happening there and what the White House is doing, because there is a big fight about it. You want to access or plan to access some of the reserves to try to lower the price. And you're seeing folks like Mike Johnson say it's disgraceful, and you're seeing former President Trump saying it's disgusting. What do you say to that?
Well, I think we should start out with a very relevant number, and that number is $3.58 a gallon. That happens to be exactly the same gas price. That's the gas price this morning, according to AAA. It's exactly the same gas price as a year ago. Now, look, we know that families are still struggling, but it's also important to recognize who we're fighting for, which relates to some of what you're just talking about now, and the progress that we've made. Gas and food prices, while still too high, let's stipulate that from the outset, have been flat in the terms of gas, same price now as it was a year ago, and down slightly for groceries, which are down in the last month by 0.2%. And that's while real wages and incomes are up. So we're definitely not there yet, but this is movement in the right direction.
But this is a temporary movement in the right direction because the underlying issues in the energy complex are such that a lot of folks in the oil patch would say this administration has not been good to them.
Well, a lot of folks in the oil patch have been doing well, both in terms of production and profitability, and that's good. We have record production of crude oil. We also have record production of renewables. So we look at the outlook there, and looks like we're hitting hard on both cylinders. I think it's also important to recognize that starting with the Memorial Day weekend and the start of the summer driving season, you saw President Biden take action to help lower prices at the pump with a release of 1 million barrels of gasoline, and that's from the Northeast Gasoline Supply Reserve, not to be conflated with the 180 million barrels of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve released back in February of 22 after the Ukraine conflict got underway.
So how should that reserve be used, though? I think there's a real question mark about that.
It should be used in periods where there is some level of emergency out there to help make sure consumers can get through a period of a disruption or a shock. And surely the invasion of Ukraine after when the president not only released 180 million barrels, but coordinated with other countries to release their own barrels from their own.
No, I appreciate when it was used then. I'm saying now.
Well, the release of the gasoline barrels from the Northeast Gasoline Supply Reserve was something that had to occur. That's just some of the natural ebb and flow. That was a legislative release. The timing was the choice of the president to make sure that between Memorial and Independence Day, we could put a little downward pressure on the price to help drivers at the pump. But I don't think there's anything particularly exciting to see there. That's just the natural management of these reserves.
Let me ask you a broader question about inflation. We were talking about a story that I think went viral over the weekend. Polls suggesting that a majority of Americans think we are in a recession today. What do you make of that?
It's a little hard to know what to make of that. It's factually not the case, but I think people are always the best arbiters of their own economic conditions. Now, look, a recession means different things to different people. I know that you and the squawkers over there know what it means in terms of the economic definition, and that's kind of dynamics and growth and unemployment and jobs that are really quite the polar opposite of what we're looking at. I mean, with unemployment below 4% for 27 months in a row, that is unequivocally non-recessionary. So there's really no argument there. I think what people are saying is that they're still struggling with prices that are too high. And the president leans into that point every time he talks about that. The important question then becomes, are we moving in the right direction? we talked a little bit earlier in this very discussion about how the gas price is exactly the same today as it was a year ago. That's remarkable when you consider the geopolitics of the region. When you talk about grocery prices, you go back to when they peaked, they were rising at double-digit. Inflation was double-digit. Now it's 1% over the past year and about negative 1% over the past 3 months. Meanwhile, incomes in wages and real terms are up. I did a calculation this morning. Real disposable income per capita up $500 over the past year. Now, none of that means we're out of the woods. People are still struggling with prices too high. We are moving in the right direction, Andrew.
Jared, but what do you make of, I mean, so a lot of times people talk about the cumulative impact of inflation during a presidency, and they say, look, if you start the clock at the beginning of the presidency and you go to now and you look at the inflation and you look at wages, there are many Americans that will say that they are genuinely behind, even if you believe the trend line today is in the right direction. What do you say to that?
Well, I start by saying once again, I know I said it before, but I'll say it again and repeat it because it's so important. People are the best arbiter of how they're doing. And if they tell us they're struggling, we're listening to them. But we don't stop there. We take action to help lower costs in precisely the areas that people tell us they're having difficulty with, whether it's childcare, housing, whether it's energy, whether it's junk fees. We're doing all we can to lower costs. And look, I think especially this year and this time of the year, it's important to contrast that with who's fighting for whom. I mean, we're trying to lower healthcare costs. The other side is trying to repeal precisely the measures that lower those costs. And so I think that there's a real contrast to be made there and a really important underscoring of who's fighting for whom in this period.